Awesome. Hello, everyone. Let me know in chat that you can hear and that I haven't messed anything up technically. What we're going to do is talk about building a second brain, the cohort-based course from Tiago Forte. We're going to work through the framework of code, so capture, organize, distill, and express in our different ways. I'm going to be using Obsidian. Bas over... Yeah, got it right first time. There is going to be using Logseq. I was like, which side is it? He's going to be using Logseq. Both of us have different use cases, different workflows. We use the tools in different ways. So there's going to be a bit of backwards and forwards about features, functions, and workflows. But if you do have any questions, let me know. All the links should be in the description for notes, links, etc. Bas, do you want to do a quick introduction of yourself, who you are, what you do, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Run a YouTube channel called Tools on Tech. I talk about different productivity tools. Lately, a lot of Logseq, mostly because I've been using it at my current project. So I'm a freelancer, and 4 out of 5 days in the week, I spend working for a Dutch bank currently, where I use Logseq to take all my meeting notes. So it's very functional notes, things that I need to collect. And one day in the week, I create content, and that's a totally different set of notes because there you try to collect data, compile them, and then basically you make notes to send them out to the world in condensed form. So it's 2 different use cases. It also makes my Logseq usually a bit sparse, at least today when I haven't been working for myself. And the Logseq notes that I have for the bank are, of course, under strict NDA, so I can't show those. But looking forward to this because it's an interesting topic.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to keep the fists to ourselves. We're not going to throw too many punches. We're going to try not to anyway.
Careful, man. It's like UK is open now. I'm traveling.
That is true. That is true. Right. So I'm now going to not share that one. I'm going to share that one. There we go. I know exactly what I'm doing, all the buttons. So Bas, do you want to go through how you capture stuff?
Yeah. Stuff. So stuff comes in, right? And that very much depends if I'm using full Logseq or I'm using my regular. I'm going to talk my regular set. So most of the things that I capture actually don't go immediately into Logseq, but go first through Todoist. And that's mostly because I'm just very used to that, doing quick add and then pasting a URL and then adding details later when I'm behind the keyboard. When you're talking media capture, like web pages, good example, you were talking about the Chow Recorder keyboard just now. And then this is what happens. In the bottom of my notes, I put the URL, put a couple of links in there, some of my initial thoughts, and then later on I might do something with it. If I want to do something with it, then I usually go for like a workflow. Let me see. Oh, I need to press escape first. That one. I'm getting used to this new keyboards, and like if I get fed up, I'll switch to my regular one. Let's see, workflow.
So I immediately saw that you put it in your daily. I assume that's a note. So you put the link in your daily note.
Yes, that's. I put everything, nearly everything, in Logseq in my daily notes. So it's like a growing system throughout the day. And that's mostly because if I want to get back to things initially, I would go to sad note and then go through the history of it. Now, if it's something that I need to actually take action on later, I usually use tags. So I got this time stream tags and a couple of to-do tags. And in this case, like with your keyboard, I just adding it to keyboard. And I know that when I'm looking at different keyboard types, I'll read that note. But if it's something that I'm going like, I really want to try that, then it's usually a web thing. Because in your case, I would have to order the keyboard and get it. And that would be a bit much for a hashtag play. But that's the one I use most of the time. I see a new app and go like, ooh, that looks interesting. I add like a hashtag play to it and I make it a to-do. And then later I process those to-dos by saying like, I want everything that's play or I want everything that's read or watch, depending on how my energy level is or the mood that I have. Listen, for example, is something that I pick up when I'm, one-wheeling to and from my office, or if I'm in the public transport. But in public transport, I usually can open a screen. So then I'm usually into watch mode, or read mode is usually trickier because it's like too busy. Read is more like in the evening when I'm winding down and getting ready for bed. So that's why I have different tags for it. So I can capture all these individual things. And then depending on other things that I need to capture, they all have their own flow into it. Most of the times, though, when I capture something, it goes in my daily journal. And I keep working at it from there. So like because you get like this time flow of things. And then if I later want to look up, so for example, the keyboard that I had, like if I open keyboard, then you see there's nothing in the note. It's like really boring. But because it shows me everything that I got linked keyboard under it, I can quickly browse through all the notes that I made and go like, oh yeah, this is what I've written about it. And then sometimes I collect things up here when I think it's useful or when I want to be able to see something when I hover over it. So keyboard isn't that important. So if I hover over it, I get like a blank set. But sometimes I usually use it for acronyms, anything short that I have at work. So somebody says like a new short 3-letter word that I've never heard before. I ask, what is it? Add that one to the note so that next time I have it, I can just type it in and then hover over it with the mouse to see the full name.
So I'm curious then, with regards to all the other types of content, so podcasts, blogs, videos, etc., is it the exact same capture process, or do you make a new note, or is it a bullet? Like how do they work?
If I'm using Logseq, it's the exact same capture process, but a lot of things I use the system that's part of whatever I'm in. So in YouTube, for example, I use watch later to add things to the watch later list, with the only detail being that if I am watching them later, then usually I'm behind the computer. And at that point in time, I make a journal entry and I add a note and start making like an outline on whatever I'm watching and add notes to it. But I don't make a page per video. I tried that in Obsidian for a while, and partially I like it, but there's just no need. So at some point I stopped doing it because I just get a lot of pages and it feels cluttery. And of course, like the benefit that I have then is that I do zoom in. So I don't go like working in this and have like a huge stream. I'm usually either folding it, the rest of the notes, or I'm going like, okay, now I'm focused on this, and I click on it so that I just have that note and I can focus on that subsection of the day.
That's interesting, because I do take like a note, which I'll go through in a second, on each video. So if you remember something from you've watched a video but can't quite remember what video it was, like how do you go back and find it, or do you go back and find it?
I always have trouble finding things back, but I usually have like a title to it, and I add marks. So is it related to something? So I'm pretty sure I have like a whole bunch of notes on video editing. Let's see. Video.
And we see the amazing speed of Logseq.
No, that's not it. That's probably on the video. Now this is the problem that I hit. I'm pretty sure I had like a whole bunch of video editing notes, and then I can't find them when I need them. But that's probably just me stressing out in the moment. But this is like a thing that I do hit. Like I forget which tags I used, and then what I usually do to remedy that is when I do research on it and I find the tags, I rename the tag at that point in time to whatever was the first thing that came into my head. And I think the main reason why I can't find is because I was fiddling last week with adding things in front of it, like topic or research. So it could be a good chance that it has something like that in front of it now. Topic.
We have a question in chat, so while you're searching for that, I'll just read it out very quickly.
Yeah.
What settings should I do to get like that line think after every header?
Oh yeah, that's something that everybody wants to know, because the first time I saw it, I wanted to know that as well. It's a plugin, actually. Actually, it's a little bit of CSS code, but the plugin is the easiest way to get it installed. So let's see, it's in here somewhere. Bullet threading. So you go to the marketplace and you install bullet threading, and that's like a really, really tiny plugin that just adds a little CSS, and then you get that line, which I love using. Yeah.
Nice. So I will go back. I'll go to mine, and I'll very quickly show you mine. Hopefully you can see everything. Oh, Discord's going to sit there. That's fine. I've moved to the dark mode, everyone. So no need to complain. The way that I capture notes is not the same at all. So if I go to my daily note, you'll see this is what I would class as like just a dump of information. So this is an idea that I had last night, just related to research. It was just a dump of information on my page. This is a link to something that I'm looking to explore. Welcome to the dark side, just sort of. This is the link that I'm looking to explore. So I'm looking at essentially trying to create an output using Pandoc and LaTeX to get citations together, and then iPad. These are links that I've dumped into my daily page, but they're not what I would class as notes that I'm actually going to use, like source notes, reference notes, literature notes, or anything like that. Any of those sorts of notes, so any source note, can you see that? Yeah, you can. Any source note, if it's an article, image, Instagram, etc., any of these things would be its own page. I think I have an example actually. Yeah, look at that. So this is a podcast I listened to this morning, and this is how I took the note on my phone, and it's synced up to my Obsidian, and this is what it looks like. It's just a very simple outline, bullets, indents, and then what I'll do is then put this into another note. But the capture process here is, as you see, it's just a new note. So any video or something will be a new note, and I will very quickly show you what I'm doing. This is the capture template, which I have set up in Obsidian. So capture, I will input the source, input the author, the date is automatically put in, the tag is automatically put in, the title is automatically put in. So all I need to do is put the link in, which you can see there's the link, the author, and then write out the note. Once I've done that, it will then sit outside of all of my folders. I don't actually go into folders, only for demonstration purposes. So you can see here, this note hasn't been processed, so I know I need to process it. It's a new note for today. Once I've done it, I will move it to sources. All of my captures are the same, except from paper notes. So literature is in academic papers, academic articles. The reason that's different, I will show you my capture note, just so you have references to what it looks like. The reason this is different from academic paper notes is paper notes I source from Zotero, because that's where I store my papers. So I have a link, which is still the same, but it's instead of it being a source. So actually, if I bring that one up, you can see the comparison. The source in a capture note is the link in a paper note. And then the reference is the reference that I use when I'm citing the paper. So the Harvard method is my reference. And there isn't that in here because the author is just normally one person, like the YouTube channel or something. Whereas with references, you can have like 10, 15 researchers all involved in a note, which I don't really want to put all of those inside as links. So I just have the reference there. And then all of the points will be brought in through Zotero and stuff, but we'll go through that later. The date created, the title is the exact same, and the note's the same as well. So that's a slight difference. But yeah, all of my capture notes are individual notes. It's not in my daily page. But if I go back to the daily page, it shows that I haven't actually changed much here. So if I go back to my daily page and go back to yesterday and have a look at the backlinks panel, I can see everything I consumed yesterday because that link, the created date link, is automatically added to every capture note. So it's always there. If anyone has any questions, go into chat. Did you find your videos? Bas.
Found out what I messed up on my system.
I will add you back to the stream then. Have a look.
What happened is that I put everything. I was learning how to use subfolders, and I had like a YouTube / and then put everything in there. But clearly, when I'm searching for it, I don't type in YouTube first. So I just spend a couple of seconds fixing it so that now when I go to video editing, which was what I initially typed, I go here and I see like basically all the notes that I made, YouTube videos, things that I have that I should look on and work on. But that's what happens when you're constantly tweaking your system. Like if it looks very logical when you're building it and go like, yeah, put everything on the YouTube and then it can find it. But then next time when you're searching for it, it's like, no, you can't. And then you have to go for the references and find back and then change it. Luckily, it's not that bad because, for example, the script writing run I was looking for, this one, okay, now I know that this won't work. So then what I do is I go here, change it. And then it says like, do you want to change it? And I say yes. And then it changes all the links and references. And I can go back to it.
Bas, can you see chat? Ronnie's asked a question that's Logseq specific. So one thing that gets me when writing in Logseq a journal is seeing dates in my visual graph, which is not helpful. Is there anything that can be done to eliminate seeing dates in the visual graph?
That's a good question, and I will need to research that one because I don't like the graph view in Logseq. Danny and me were riffing about that before. That's one of the things that I miss from Obsidian. The one is like it's like a very clear interface, and it's clear that the graph view in Logseq still needs like some attention and loving on it. I did remember something about it that when I was playing around with it, but I'll need to figure that one out. So I'm gonna do like a little bit of digging later when Danny is talking, and if I have an answer, then I'll let you know.
Sounds good. Yes. So that is what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to very quickly. So for those of you that want to see this note, there's a link in the description. But this is exactly what you'll see if you go onto the note, which link in description again. This is the building a second brain note that I've created. This is in my system. So we've just gone through the capture part of the code process. So you come up to code. Code is capture, organize, distill, and express. So this is the capture part. Avoiding overconsumption. The way that I do that is just managing my time. So all of the YouTube videos that I consume, I do actually at the end of the day as part of my like daily routine. I'm just like YouTube video at end. When I'm researching something with regards to normally a topic, a paper of some sorts, I have time blocked sections. So I can't just do everything all the time. So I essentially time block to make sure I don't do too much consumption. It's sort of like you have 2 hours to read papers or read a really small book. Yeah, so I separate my time up with time blocks. How do you manage overconsumption, Bas? Or avoiding overconsumption anyway?
I mostly avoid overconsumption by, in my case, doing a just-in-time setup. So I make notes about things and I add references to it, but I don't do anything with it. I don't consume it or process it. I process it when I need it. So, for example, the video editing, which I couldn't find, is like I collect those things over time, and at some point I'm going like, today I really want to focus on video editing, and then I go to video editing, and then I collect it and go process it. So I read it when I need it, and not read it up front and then process it. It's a different way of working, but it, to me at least, works very well. Even though I sometimes can't find the exact note, or I'm re-googling some stuff. There's so much things happening in a day that I just try to put it in a bucket where I'm going to process it if I want to process it.
That makes sense. I think you covered the capture tools as well earlier, saying that you just use the native tool. I'm the same. YouTube, watch later list, Twitter, bookmarks, podcast is I think it's called listen later. I can't remember, or maybe your episodes it might be called. But yeah, I use Spotify for podcasts.
Check the graph view, and I'm a bit confused because I have a journal switch which removes the days from it.
I'm going to share your screen.
But I'm not sure if that's what Ronnie means. So let me see. You have like the graph view here. And if I go to notes, and I already have them off, like journals, because those add like a whole bunch of pages to it, and then it becomes ridiculous. Even my computer starts struggling. So those ones I want out. Or is he meaning that like it's showing the dates in between, and that's like confusing it? So Ronnie, if you got like a
clarification.
Yeah, clarification. If that's like, or does he use the visual graph on the side? And I can focus down on the actual question.
Sounds good. So, organize. Bas, we'll go with you as you're already screen sharing. How do you organize all of your, I'm going to say stuff again, because I don't want to say content or notes or anything, because I'm like, it could be anything. So, stuff.
Yeah. Well, if luckily the sidebar is open, so you already see things like projects here or areas. So very much a Para-based approach. One of the things that I use from Para is that I use like the same name everywhere. So side notes, for example, is here you see like a project, because that one has like my unique identifier in front of it, which means the 2022 first month that I created this. And it was like the first project of that month, which is easy because when I type Ctrl-K, like this is where, like this is the 5th month, I type A, then I see that there's a project already. Then I go like, okay, then I'll take B. Which also doesn't work. So C, depends a bit like how active I'm in it. But I usually get there like in a couple of seconds and have like a unique identifier. That one also works perfectly fine in Obsidian, because that's where I originally started using that as a system. And I mostly do that because when I start working on a project and I'm constantly in the same project, I know those 4 things by heart, and I can just type it in and quickly get to it. Let's see if I go to projects, for example. So this is like a filter of the active projects that I currently have. And this is, of course, the human factor. I try to add this small emoji at the end with the crane, which I use for projects so that I can easily spot when it's a project. But that's a manual action, so I forget, as you can see in the other 2 projects, being human and all. And I use the same setup as Logseq uses for that. So the Logseq has tasks, and if you do a task, then it shows you like if it's to do or done. And I use the same set in a page. So if I go to this one where I'm open is like as a state, I put it to doing, and that means that it's an active project. Either it's to do, meaning I need to start doing it, or it's done, which means in both cases I don't want them in my active view. They're either planned or they're already done. And doing is anything that's active. And that's the same for areas, which I have only started with recently on Logseq. So there's a couple of things like my motorcycle is an area that needs attention because else it doesn't drive, which it currently doesn't. Family, urbanizer, volunteer organization. So I'm trying to build this out to really get like the areas and start grouping things together. That was one of the reasons why I had the whole editing on the YouTube, because I tried grouping things and then I go like, oh no, I shouldn't try and make it smarter than it actually is. As for the resources, that's just everything. Any node that I put in the system is like a resource in itself. But I use type to give it the motion on like what it is. So I think you've already seen like the type of project, and the same thing for the areas. Let me see. I think family is like still pretty empty. No, that's not empty enough. But it's like type areas in the corner. And that's like a way of how I build these things. But books is a good example. So if I go to, I keep clicking on the myself inside the StreamYard setup. Anyhow, if we go to book, then there's like an overview of books, what state they're in. So red. I also want to change this one to do, doing, done actually, but this one's the system that I already had. And this then shows me books. And if I go to like for a second, all systems red, then I got a type in there, says the science fiction, the author, so I can click through to it. And now this is like a science fiction fun book, so it usually doesn't have any detailed notes. But if it's more, I'm not sure if I was working in, I think I was still in Notion when I was reading the book from Daryl Eves, but maybe we're lucky. There's some notes in it. YouTube formula. Okay, this one has like a little bit of notes, like key takeaways, because I was trying to get the notes over from Notion. And I want to reread this one with actually having like this setup where I take notes from each chapter, but then I like build out the specific things. I have to work on it, but you know, time is a problem if you work 4 days a week. But that's how I collect all the resources. Most of the resources go into the journal, small resources, but I do, once they start getting bigger, turn them into pages. So things like books go into pages because they're just too big for a journal and they span multiple days. Anything that spans multiple days does get a page. Things that are just 1 day, so like a 10-minute YouTube video, that goes in the journal. It doesn't need a page. It's not big enough for it. Unless I start referencing it a lot, then I start making it into a page just because I'm lazy and I don't want to go like copy the link, the block reference all the time, which is a way of working, because if you do Ctrl-C and then the block reference gets copied. So normally I wouldn't open the menu for it, and then just paste it where I need it. And then with Logseq, you also see this, like the references that are to that specific block.
You can do that in Obsidian. It's a community plugin. Just saying.
Yeah.
But then I think that's the answer to most things. Like, oh,
most things is I think that like I have used like Obsidian like for half a year in ABN AMRO, and there's a lot of things that I miss. Mostly the split pane thing. But then again, as said, I currently have like my project notes open in a different page, which I really love the fact that I have multiple pages to the same vault, basically, for which I need to hack it. I could do it in Obsidian, but then I had to hack with like a symlink and like opening the same vault twice, which is, you know, it all works.
I'm curious. Obviously, there's the ongoing debate about folders versus tags, how you use tags, how you use folders. It looks like what you just gone through is your folder system, and earlier was the tags. Do you use them together, or do you just like use search and like how do they work? Like with regards to organizing stuff.
As I said, I was recently messing with it because I made like a video about blocks versus pages, which is the topic we just discussed. And now I'm looking into like tags and links and folder structures inside Logseq. Now, Logseq doesn't have folders like Obsidian has. Everything goes into the pages folder, but you can make folders by taking a project, putting a slash behind it and giving it a subname, and then it becomes part of a hierarchy. So as you saw with my YouTube one, Yeah, this one has like a structure, but if I go, for example, to I think retention, which is like things that I found on retention, it starts giving you this hierarchy on the bottom. And the same works if you go to the YouTube and I go all the way to the bottom, it shows you like, okay, these ones are related. So it builds like a structure there. I've noticed that in practice, I rarely use it because there's very few nodes that are single linked, like only related to that specific thing. The place I use it the most is with my contacts. So if I have like a person and that person has some project they're working on or something that they're related, that's really tightly coupled with them, then I make a sub thing. Instead of like putting it in the notes. Then again, that also spawns from my Obsidian use, because with Logseq I could just make foldable setups and be happy with it. But I like the sub pages because sometimes I just don't want to load everything in or see all the details.
Yeah, it's not for me. Let's just say that.
I think we already took that conclusion before we started this video. That's why we made it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna hop over to me now. Yeah, that's not for me. With regards to how I organize, I'm in Obsidian, so I do have folders. I don't really use the folders. I mean, I say I don't use them. I move things to them purely for categorization. I don't actually like sift through folders to find things. I use search. So my journal folders is just this is an easy way to find, like, navigate to a certain day, but I never really need to go there. It's just I need the page stored somewhere, so they are stored in folders. The notes is where all of my notes are, which I'll go through after these ones because notes are much longer to explain. PDFs is my backup of Zotero. So all of the academic articles that I have in Zotero, I have backed up sort of in PDFs inside of my Obsidian. I'm in the process of moving them elsewhere because having them here, it's fine, it works. It's just I'd like to have them somewhere else. So I may just move that entire folder out of the vault. I'm not sure yet. I haven't decided, but that's what's in there. Personal files, the only reason I have this here is because I share all of my notes into Obsidian Publish. So you can see everything in my journal and everything in my notes folder on Obsidian Publish. Every time I make a change, it's always public. So personal is just a folder that has personal notes in. I don't want everyone in the world to see. That's basically it. And then templates are the templates that I went through earlier. So that's the folder structure. You'll see down here that I do use tags, but I use tags as statuses and stages. So this is a saved tag search, right? So what I've done is I've gone and I've tagged all of my notes as notes. So these are every single note that's in my notes folder. These are all of the other notes. Sources, but the main ones that I use are waiting. So these are notes that, so if I come into here, you'll see this is a note template and it's got a waiting tag on it because that's the status it is. I haven't written it. I'm not writing it. It's just I'm waiting to write it. So that's ADHD, and then you've got Bayes' rule, you've got behavior, and loads of other things. So it's a topic, it's a concept, it's an idea that I want to write about, but I'm waiting on it. It's not top of mind. Then I've got written notes, which are notes that I've written, i.e. I've actually started putting things into sentences. These are inline footnotes. So if I go to the reading view, they turn into actual footnotes. But the actual written note has writing in it. It reads like sentences. That's a really odd thing there. Let's get rid of that. So this is just a written note. Then I've got writing notes, which is, I'm down here, aren't I? Writing notes, which are things I'm writing, but not necessarily active on. So I'm writing through something. So this one, I'm writing it, but I have loads and loads and loads of notes. And it's not active. Actually, it might be active. It is active. And that's how I know. So which one isn't? This one. This one is active. There must be one that isn't. There we go. I was going to say, because I know what I was looking at earlier. So this is note-taking. This is all of my notes on note-taking, which is expansive. So I'm writing this note, but I'm not actively writing in it, which is where the active tag and to-do tag comes in. So if I'm actively working on something, it comes up in here. And if I need to do something, it will come up in here. But I don't really use these. I will use these. So if I go to my home workspace, that was Control-Shift-O, these are the two workspaces that I work with, home and work. That's the workspace core plugin. It's core. Don't have to community add it at all. I've got the conference that's currently going on, Linking Your Thinking conference. That's the note that you can see as a source note, to do, active. These are all the notes from the conference. The memory note, which is I'm working through memory and how this works. Sleep, and then Internet Academics is a project that I'm working on as well. So that's how I separate it. And you can see up here, we've got active as a tag and to do as a tag. So these are things I need to do that I'm actively working on. If I want to look at things that I've written, then I need to do, there they are. Writing that I need to do, waiting I need to do, and the source notes that I need to do. So it's kind of like an upcoming list, a what to do next list. So if I can't be bothered to do, let's come into here. If I can't be bothered to work on any of these, or I feel like, you know what, I feel like doing something else, because distractions, I can come in here and see, okay, I've written something about systems theory. Let's see what I've got to do. So I'll go to my to-do section, and I need to distill the entire page. So I can start distilling the page. And you'll see this is the outline, which is the outline core plugin again. And this is how I navigate through the pages. We have the main structure. This is still in the organize section because this is how I organize my notes. This is an overarching structure to all of my notes, my working notes, which if I go back to my folder, that's everything inside of here, not the sources. Synopsis, so I know roughly what's going on. This is still written, so this isn't a very good synopsis. It's just what I have at the moment. Links, so they are any topics, ideas, concepts, thoughts that are related to systems theory, but not inside of text. So ecological dynamics and complexity theory are related to systems theory, but they're not inside of the text, as in I've written about them. So systems are this. I may have, it looks like reduction of complexity. That may be a link in the future, but I haven't written this page. So let's use a different example. Yep, let's use a written page that I don't have to do. So let's go to cognitive load theory. That's always fun. Actually, let's go to the multimedia education page because I recently did a video on that. So this is my note on multimedia education, the Veritasium research video. So inside of the synopsis, it links to multimedia, which is a block inside of this page. Evolution of technology, which is a chapter, a section, this entire section inside the page. So this is a condensed synopsis. So I don't have to go through the page to find information. I can just look straight up here. Links, multimedia education. Link, obviously it's related to education, but all of education, not just a specific block part. So video guidelines here. That's a specific part, a specific section. Learning is just everything. Cognitive load theory is everything, etc., etc. You see content creation is related to multimedia, but has very little to do with learning unless you're creating content around learning. So there may be a link in those pages. I don't know. I will have a look. No, it's not. So you can see content creation isn't linked to learning, but they could be sort of linked in there, which is nice to see. Then the points, which is the actual content of the page, to do. And then the reason I have references is because when you go into the reading view, all the references are underneath it. So it's nice to see inside of the publish view. That covers tags and folders. And I think that covers most of my organizational structure when it comes to learning things, finding things anyway. The next thing I do want to mention is the local graph view. I use this, which in Logseq, I don't have a clue how I would use it because I don't like the side panel in Logseq. Sorry, Logseq users. I don't like it. Maybe Bas can comment later. But I use this, and I have grouping colors, which I asked Bas earlier, and I was like, be really, really basic. Like, what do you think they are? And he got it like basically straight away. Green is I've done it. So it's a written note. Red is I haven't done it. So it's a waiting note. Orange is I'm working on it. So it's a writing note. So I can see inside of multimedia education that I have notes that I have written: cognitive load theory, retrieval practice, building a second brain, and content creation. I can also see I'm working on memory and my research, which is my PhD research, in this view. And then I can see there's other notes that I'm still waiting on. If I was to go into one of these other notes, you can see there's different notes in here, and I've got purple. So purple is something that's just out there. It's an other note that might be interesting to have a look at. So I use this to figure out, am I synthesizing all this information together? Am I like, okay, I've got loads of green dots here. I've thought this through. I've got loads of red dots here. I haven't thought this through at all. And that's how I use the local graph view. I rarely use the main graph view because it looks disgusting. This I know is filtered. So this is filtered for working notes. So this only has like 600 points in it. It's 700. So it's got 700 points in it, but yeah, this is too hectic for me to navigate. And if I open up all my notes, what's that? 5,100 files? Yeah, no, thank you. But yeah, so I don't use the global graph view, but I do use the local graph view for finding things that are related and related ideas. Bas, do you want to comment on local graph view? Because I know you have an opinion on that.
He knows my opinion is that I miss it. But yeah. It's like I like the local graph view, and I love the way that I could make filters and colors to it, and that's something that I miss in Logseq currently. So I didn't use the graph view that much in Obsidian, so for me, losing that ability was worth it when I switched to using Logseq full time. But I do miss it. Anytime I look at the graph view, I'm going like, I wish I could filter. I wish I could add colors so I could make an overview just like you have on the side here, where like you have different colors and things the meaning. I used to use it for types of information. So I wanted to know which nodes are people, which nodes are projects, which nodes are journal entries, which is different than in your case, in which case you use it for status. I use filters and lists for status. And what I preferred was being able to see what it was related to. Is it something that involved a lot of people? Is it something that involved a specific couple of projects? Did it involve multiple projects? Because in this case, we have some between projects. That's very much driven from my corporate side of using the nodes, right? If two projects use the same subset of meetings, then hey, there's overlap. We may need to drag a couple of people together. If there's a lot of people related and they're from different teams and that also had different colors, then I might want to drag those together. So that's where the colors really came in for me. And now I just have to click and see the references, but it isn't as visually pleasing and easy as it was when I was still using Obsidian for those tags. Let's see. And you also mentioned I saw you using the outline, which is also a point where I always go like, I wish I had outlines again.
Yes, I did notice that was. I think I brought it up in the video that I did with like Obsidian v Logseq. Now, I will say, when I did that video, some of the things that I was struggling to do in Logseq was partly because I was so accustomed to Obsidian, but I couldn't find an outline anywhere. And I use an outline all of the time, especially when I'm working. Like when I'm in, actually, I'll show you very quickly. When I'm in my workspace, this is how I work. I will work with one note up here, one note up here. This just happens to be what I was working on recently. I have an outline for this note, so I can jump to practice methods here. And then on this note, I can jump to wherever. I don't normally use the outline for this one, but I will be scrolling up and down on this one. So maybe, because this one is for both. So if I go to background theory, it will jump them both to background theory. And then this one goes to practice methods. And I'll use the outline to jump around all the time. But Logseq, you can't have this sort of setup. Like you just can't do it. And I'm like, unless there is a plugin or something that I'm missing.
No, it's a different way of working. So what I do in Logseq is I constantly fold things and then dive into those as I need to go through them. So if I'm writing a script, for example, that's a place where I really want to have my outlines. I'm going to see if I have like an example from my 5 most used Logseq queries.
While you're finding that, I see in chat, Ariane, I think I've said that right. Apologies if not. There's a table of content plugin by Seth Yuan that does this, he thinks, or they think.
I've looked at a couple of those, but most of them put it like on the top, which means I have to scroll to the top to click on it and get down to where I want to go.
That reminds me of Notion.
What I would really like, Danny, can I have the screen for a moment? Is of course is to have it like either on the side or to have it on this side. And I've seen ways that I could get it to work, but it's a bit clunky. For now, what I do is I use the way Logseq wants me to use, and that's use this. So I just fold things in and go like, okay, I need to go to tips, and I might want to see an overview. Then I click on it and go like, 2C, that's where I want to be, and then I work on it. So it's a different way of working. You can scroll through it by using the keyboard. So for me, it's a quick way of getting around. It's a different way of working. Once I started to get used to it, I definitely could work with it, but it's not as nice as also having like an overview on the side when you're doing like large swaths of text and you want to see things top to bottom for each other. But as said, like I can work with it. I miss it. just like the graph, but it's not something that I couldn't live without. And eventually it will get there, because I've talked with multiple people, and there's a wish to have that on the side. So at some point the feature will be there, but you can't build everything in one day. And Logseq is constantly growing and adding features. So, it's just not the most important thing currently. But that's how I work around it.
Yeah, they did say in chat that that one is in the sidebar, so it might be something to have a look at, Bas, to bring back.
Maybe like I'm missing out on something, so I'm definitely gonna add that one to the things to do.
And you're gonna add it in your daily note. Yeah. I was thinking, if we're counting scores, I think you've said I missed that from Obsidian more than I wish I had that in Logseq. So I think we're winning. Like we're tallying up. Just saying.
Same, yeah.
Not that I'm biased at all.
And still, I'm using Logseq all the time, so there must be something.
You're silly. That's what it is. Yeah. What I will say before we move on to the Distil section is you use Logseq for projects and tasks and like actions, what I would class as action management. I don't do that in Obsidian at all. So I guess I'll share it very quickly. I'm going to share my screen. This is Morgen. So that was a global hotkey to bring it up on my other screen. I've just dragged it over. I use Morgen as my day planner. I've got a video on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, to look at that. But you can see building a second brain. These are all the tasks. These are events. So these are events for the Linking Your Thinking conference. I was in that one. Obviously, I can't do that one because I'm streaming. Same with that one. But I use tasks in here. So these are the tasks I need to do. That was spacebar on my keyboard. And then all of the events and things. And I use this as my task and project management rather than Obsidian. So that is something to think about with regards to like an all-in-one tool, app, whatever, which is where projects, I don't do that in Obsidian. You could, but I don't personally. What are your thoughts on that, Bas?
Yeah, it's like sorry, I mean, I had like a train of thought going, and then I lost you in the last minute. What was the main topic?
Action management. Action management.
Yeah. Getting like in the action setting. To double checking my notes on that one, because oh man.
Sorry, so while you're thinking, I'm just going to respond to what Torin said in chat. He said he really wanted to try Morgen, but it was just too expensive. With regards to Morgen, they have changed their plan. So you've got like personal, pro, and free. The free plan is like I could use the free plan. The only reason I don't use the free plan is because I speak to the developers and they give me the pro plan. Something that is mildly confusing that I've had questions about before is when Morgen says you have one calendar, it's calendar account. So a Google Calendar account is one calendar. If you're using Google and Outlook, then your Google Calendar would be one account. Your Outlook would be another account, which is where you'd need the personal. And then, yes, they do have a free plan. And then if, for example, you've attached the Google Calendar to Morgen and you have multiple calendars in there, then that's all counted for. So if I bring up my Morgen very quickly and show you that, hopefully not doxing myself too much.
That's always the trick with live streams. It's like definitely when using your own systems.
Oh, yes. So this is my one calendar account, which is like allowed on the free plan. And these are all of the events, all of the different calendars that I have in my Google Calendar. So sister, Forte Labs, building a second brain 14, because I was in the cohort 14. My mum, dad's calendars, because Google Calendar with my parents is just painful. They're not tech savvy at all. And then my actual calendars up here as well. So all of the stuff I do in Morgen can be done on the free account, free plan, unless you need two calendar accounts, really. But again, refer to my video for more info. Did you come up with what you were thinking about with regards to action management and doing it in Logseq /
Yeah, I was going to throw like an example in there for meetings, which is one of the reasons why I'm on Logseq and not on... So, yeah, normally when I have like a meeting, I for example, use a tag for it. Oh, wait, it's the mouse? No, it's not. Yeah, it's the mouse. One thing like it always selects where the mouse is, and I hate that when I'm using the keyboard. I don't want you to look at the mouse. It's a pet peeve of mine that I need to find a solution and a bug report for, actually, because it's not designed. Anyhow, but the reason why I use Logseq for actions is that when I'm in a meeting, I love the fact, for example, that I can add properties to it. So, for example, I would say example person, but that is like a long set. But very often, like, I know that I'm there, for example, and you're there because I was an hour early due to the difference in time zones. And one of the reasons why I like this is because when I do action management, if I have to ask something to someone, for example, it's like, ask B to, and then example person. And that immediately is something that becomes part of my system. So if I talk to said person, I usually open their page. And now it's easy because you can immediately see like this reference under it. But normally with most people, I have like plenty of meetings that they were in and everything. And that's when I usually start doing quick queries. So I say things like, I want a task and I want it to be related to example person. Let's see, did I add enough slashes? I think so, yes. And then I get like this, and this shows me everything that's to do. So I talk to the person, I ask him about it, I mark it down, and it moves away. This is a one-time, of course, thing. I have a template normally that I would use for it, but that adds way too much. And I also want to show like how quickly I can build something like that. Next time I talk to him, all the things that I did are marked down. So for me, actions are things that I get added to the journal as I'm typing them. In a meeting, I need to chat with people, I need to get tasks done. That's what I put there over time. And then, when I talk to said person, I can reference it. And that's very much a work oriented way of working. And also why I like putting my tasks in Logseq for work. For normal stuff, I usually still use Todoist, but that's because at home, I need to run through the house all the time. And then having a task list on your phone is just easier to check, and I work together with other people. At work, I always have my laptop, so then having one tool makes it easy and fast.
Torin, firstly, yes, flashbacks with Notion formulas with that query. Like, who wants to be doing code? Like, come on. I'm curious. You said you use Todoist and then you use Logseq. So I'm guessing the Logseq is more like teamwork, project management stuff, and Todoist more like home task action stuff.
For me, like Todoist is where I keep my task list on a normal day. So I make a day plan, I check the tasks that I have and I put them in. I use the tasks in Logseq mostly for processing data. So it's stuff that's related to data that I still need to process. I want to read this. I need to talk to person A or B, and it's related to this data stream. So the reason why the tasks in Logseq are useful is because I know that when I need that, I'm probably behind my laptop or close to it, work-related stuff, and I want all that related data. I want to go like, hey, I need to ask this because I was in a meeting with so-and-so and I need these notes. Some people at some point started to notice, like, how do you know this? And I'm going like, in system. Todoist for me is much more like all the separate things that I need repeating. While I can do repeating in Logseq, I find repeating tasks in Todoist just clearer. And when I order or plan my day, for ABN AMRO, where the bank I'm working at currently, there I can't use Todoist because I can't use any cloud services, which is a video I'm trying to build now because I had to let go of my default workflows and learn new ones. So there I do everything in Logseq, everything's in Markdown files, everything is local and doesn't leave the laptop, which makes sure that I'm compliant to all the security requirements. But in my regular stuff, what I do now is I collect the tasks in the morning when I make a day plan, and I use part Logseq and part Todoist. Anything that's in Logseq that I want to do that day, I usually transfer to Todoist in that case because I will need it at one side, and at some point, depends a bit on the day. If I have like a YouTube day, I can usually stick to Logseq because all the data is in Logseq and I just focus on Logseq that day. But if I have a mixed day, then I move everything to Todoist because Todoist usually has like all the tasks that I needed to do with individual things that I planned, and then I combine it. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge there, and I'm still not 100% sure I'm going to stay. But they both have their main benefits. Todoist mostly the working together thing is what I like, and the fact that I can easily read it on my phone, which is generally why I would still use Todoist and not Logseq yet.
Fair enough. I see Tom's joined the chat and he says, hey guys, really interested in your opinion on this. Do you want to be more specific on what this means? Because we're talking about building a second brain, which encompasses like the majority of project, task, and action management. Thanks, Tom.
I made a typo.
We do know Tom, so it's okay if we make fun
I'm pretty
of him
sure
a
he's like also on the moon lander right now, right? Because he's the one that looks like an interesting gadget and tries to get it as soon as possible.
Yeah, probably. I was going through the building a second brain note, which I've linked in the description for those that are joining. I see the numbers popping up. Note metadata is something that I have inside of the organize section, because some notes inside of Obsidian or Logseq or whatever other tool you use, don't say Evernote or Notion, joking, before I get comments, what metadata do you add to your notes, if any? Because you're using your daily notes page, which like you've got tags, but is there any other metadata that you put to notes, or is it just a tag?
Tags and of course linking. So very often when I think it's related, I start linking to it. When I think like this is like a topic that I want to talk about, many tags, like the same as what you have, like if I write some text, then I start adding brackets and seeing if I got something related, if I think those are topics or resources, making that I can find them back if I'm looking at a specific topic. Of course, the main problem that you hit with that one is that my brain is scatterbrained, so it doesn't always return the exact same name for the topic. One of the ways that I work around that one is I use the alias function from Logseq. So I give a page multiple names so that I can just use all of them.
I'm sharing your screen so you can do a demonstration, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
So like, for example, let's see, like doing a...
This is live Logseq using.
Yeah, so talking about Logseq alias, for example. I'm not sure if Logseq has aliases, but
your pronunciation of words confuses me so much. And then I see the word written, I'm like, oh, it makes sense now.
Yeah, and there's like still a point on like, you know, do you say Logseq or Logseq? I was told Logseq was the method, but at some point it kind of like nobody really cared. You know, as long as you use the tool, so that's seems fine. Now, the aliases for me very often come with shorting things. So yeah, like personal knowledge management. So in those cases, I usually start saying like, okay, then I add like an alias to it, so that when next time I'm typing and I'm starting to type like the full word, I get both options basically.
Makes sense. Yeah, I use aliases quite a bit.
Yeah, which helps me to retain the same information or to make it readable. So I also very often use it for plural and singular words. So if I have topic and topics, and I make an alias for topics, so that when I'm typing it in a sentence, you know, it just feels better.
Now that's interesting. I think I'm going to save my point on that one for the Distil section, which we're going to get into in a second. Just going to quickly go through a couple of points raised in chat. Can you talk about digital gardening? Yes, we will probably talk about that with regards to the expression section. Let's share my screen so we know what it's talking about. So you can see express. We'll probably go into digital gardening when we get to there. And Tom's put in an essay of a comment. You both have generally a great opinion on note-taking solutions. So the discussion of blah, 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 blah. Okay, I was waiting for the question that you mentioned you were going to put in, but never mind. So, Distil. How do you distill your notes, whether it be from sources or meetings or anything like that? I'm going to go back to sharing your screen now.
Yeah, sharing notes is trickier because at least for Logseq, it's not as easy as like with Obsidian, where you have like the publish thing. So if I need to share a note, I've got one for the advanced queries, I think. Logseq advanced queries. Was that this page? Yeah. So there I have like a link says public true, and I usually put the URL in it. And what happens in Logseq, I can then use export. I think it's the export graph. I haven't used it in a while, but you can export the public pages.
So is this how you express the notes or distill the notes?
This is like the distilling. So like I have like the notes combined here, and then I thought we were talking about the sharing of the notes with people once they're distilled. So these ones I make public eventually, like when I have like the whole line with like the table of contents on top of it, and then I commit it to like a Git repository because I use Git as a hosting platform, and that one publishes it. But it's not as user friendly yet as I would like, and I'm also messing with like a different setup there because let's see, Alexi once made like a Hugo export, which is like a static website generator, and my engineering side is going like, oh, if I get that figured out, then I got full control on how it will look. And that will, but that's like another rabbit hole. I dove into that for like half an hour to an hour, and I was like, this is, and then I just made it task forward with like a play thing because I need to find some time to actually mess with it instead of wasting a whole day on it when I need to make a video. As for the other thing, I'm currently working on the atomic notes bit. Let's see if I had like stuff on that one. Where I'm trying to make small self-contained notes. Yeah, of course you have notes on that. We all have. So let's see, Evergrade note takers and turn thoughts into notes. And I'm working on that, but it's not useful yet. I got like one or two, and they're not very functional because I just wanted to play a couple of days with it to turn things into things that I can easily share. But as digital gardening shows, you need to do it for a while before you start growing plants. And in my case, it's just barren soil and I need to start watering it.
So once you've grabbed a note, how do you, like, if you've got loads of ideas from something, how do you put it all together? Like, do you have a note-taking note and then all the different references going into it? Or how do you like put ideas into one page? Or do you put them into one page, or do you just have like a running theme, and when you decide to do a video, you just bring everything in that you can remember?
Yeah, so with Logseq, because anything that's a subpart of a link will be part of it. So let's take this one from like, for example, your name with it. I just marked like a block of text with a link, and then if I need to put notes together, I go to said link, and then you basically scroll through all the notes that are linked to it and all the data that's related, and then combine that one in the top. So it's not ideal because there's a lot of scrolling involved, which is something with Obsidian I put side by side, but I like the scrolling because you can see all the data. So very often I don't even do that. Like in the case of people, I usually don't care about like a condensed version. I usually care about what was related, and because it's time ordered, it usually shows me like, what did we discuss in the last meeting that we had, or like what topics are they currently working, or what projects are they part of. And I don't like garden it. I do garden it when I talk topics. So when I, for example, when I'm making a video, then I usually go like to the video and I open it in the sidebar, the one that, you talked about, the side scroll thing. Then I have like the video over here, and I open a topic here where I get like the full string of information. So let's see, I had like the Logseq query video that I made. So this is like the whole script in it with like all the subtext in it. And then on the side, I usually would have like my notes on queries in it. So the using the advanced queries was that one, and that one's then on the side. So I would then scroll here, get notes, and move them towards the main one on the left. The only problem, of course, being is that you can only work on one thing at a time. But for me, that's a bonus because, as I said, I'm very scatterbrained. If I have 5 notes open, I don't do anything anymore. I lose my train of thought and I can't get anything done, which is the exact opposite from you. I believe you start working once you have 40 panes open or something. So for me, this is actually better because I'm focused on whatever I'm working on at the time. The limitations that I have with Logseq here actually help me. If I do need to open multiple pages, then I use the Control N function, or like the extra, because you can say like here, new window, and then open like a second window and put the notes to the side. So if I really want to combine a lot of notes, then I do that. But in practice, I rarely need to do it. Usually I just scroll left and right a couple of times to get that one thing that I'm collecting. And of course, very often I combine blocks. So if I have, for example, something that's interesting, I go there, Control C it, and then say like, oh, I need it here, and then I keep going. and then because it comes to reference, so I recombine things to bring data together, which I use tags for. You see it here as well, where I say like, hey, I got studio stuff or B-roll things that's somewhere in this script. And then above it, I have a query that just says, get me all the B-roll stuff in the current page. And then I get like a subset of information from whatever I collected.
Right, we got a couple of Logseq questions in the chat. So Torrens asked the alias and then page name question mark. So just like the formatting of the alias, if you could go back to one or just show one as to what the formatting is.
So the formatting for aliases is in your page. So you just type alias, and this is like all properties in Logseq. So you type something and say like, and you can also make more on. If you do this, then you get 2, right? So then both aliases are there. And if you do Shift Enter, you can also say multiple things. So I say like, this is an example. And then those things you can get from queries. So this is how you build properties. And one of the things I like about Logseq is because it's not page-based, but block-based. I can make another block and say like, hey, this one is also related, like type, extra. And then that one also is a type, which you saw me do with the meeting example, where I'm saying like, hey, I have a meeting, but I also want a property in it saying who attends the meeting. That becomes a property now. So if I now make a filter and I say like, give me all the meetings, I can say, show me who was attending those meetings, and I get like a nice table view of it.
Nice. Tom followed up with his question. He said he likes the bullet lists, and Logseq seems to provide equal views on my notes and then correct question mark. So I'm not entirely sure what equal views means, but I assume it means like equal indents inside of notes. But yeah, you can do that inside of Obsidian with bullet points, and you can change the different tab formats. The difference from my experience is in Logseq, you can't just write. It has to be a bullet point. Am I correct in saying that, Bas?
Let's see. Yeah, you can do document mode. We have to switch to it. Wait a minute. So you can do this TD, and then it removes the bullet points. But in practice, I just started getting used to the bullet points at some point, so I don't use it for writing. If I do want to write actual text, I usually go to a note and then say, okay, it doesn't work for the journal, but with Pages it does. You have like open in default app, and then it opens it in Visual Studio Code in my case, because developer. But then I just start typing Markdown if I want to do real long text writing. And then I usually pick something else than Visual Studio Code, something absolutely minimal Markdown written. And then it doesn't look perfect in Logseq, but that's the trade-off that I make. And very often I don't need it. I just switched everything to bullet points.
Well, while you mentioned Markdown, we've got a question in here from, I think, Fabrice, who comes from Notion, is basically asking, how do you make your Markdown work across all apps? And this is something that I personally don't think is possible very well. If you want to use advanced features inside of the apps, Logseq's Markdown is different to Obsidian's, which is different from Rome's. Notion uses very basic Markdown, so that normally transfers across quite well. It's just their export is quite poor, so you'd have to deal with Notion's export. But yeah, I can't think of a good way to make Markdown work across the apps unless you
see it here already. This is a note that I made with Obsidian like a while back, and the only thing I changed just now was like this to use the embed function. But in Logseq, normally this is like one bullet point where every number is under each other, and here it's like individual bullet points, and it's not perfect. And I also see it in like my old journals. If like go to like an old journal, go back a couple of months, then they're written in Obsidian, and then the layout is different because Logseq starts from a bullet point start point, and Obsidian starts from a plain Markdown and adds bullet points as a step in between. So it's not perfect. Yes, I have my data, but very often I either need to reformat it. Don't even get me started on the differences between properties and linking things, because linking things is totally different between Obsidian and Logseq. So if you're using both side by side, you really lose that functionality, and you can't combine it. Trust me, I tried. They have two totally different ways of writing it down, and you can't mix them, which is annoying. But that's just a choice. Pick one tool over the other and do most of the features there. And I think that's the markdown limit that you have, right? Either you use all the bells and whistles of the app, but you lose that functionality in a different app, or you restrict yourself to plain markdown, which is a shame, because in that case you might as well start working in Notepad, because markdown was written in a way that you could use it in Notepad. I'd still pick Vim, of course, but developers. Fabrice should know, because I know Fabrice for a long time now, and he's spent enough time in Linux to know his Vim editor. The strict mode, yeah, definitely.
The question around, go for it.
For the people that don't use Vim, VI has like a strict mode, meaning that you can only use the basic functionality. So when he talks strict mode in this case, and the reason I'm laughing is that you would have like a feature that you switch on and you could only use plain markdown stuff for a while, which is funny.
Yeah. When it comes to the question about tags and the color, the answer in Obsidian and Logseq is exactly the same. It's CSS. So Bas has a CSS that changes the color. Yeah, go for it. You can show some code on screen. It's not like I'm going to close my eyes.
So like this is my CSS code. Now this I didn't write. I just copy pasted it in because then it syncs to all my devices. But all the way in the bottom, I use these ones to color my tags. So this is like the code bit. I just copy paste that, changed it to the tag name, and then the background color. And that changes my tags and the color. This is what it is. It's not super hard, but it's still more difficult than it should be.
I'm simple with mine. I keep mine very, 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 very basic. I haven't changed it at all. Mainly because I don't want things to change when they do change back-end stuff. I'm like, I've got to redo the CSS. No, I don't want to fiddle with that. So my Distil section is a little bit different, and I think it's because I spend more time inside my notes for research and for understanding fairly complex topics. So I need to be able to distill lots of information into something that's a little bit more usable. So continuing with my example of the multimedia education, this is the thesis that I read, which I think this is, let me just stop sharing for a second so I can get rid of this Discord thing, because it's just annoying. And then we'll come back to that one. There we go. So this is, 20-something thousand words? Yeah, 26,000 words in this page. And this is distilled. It was 60-something thousand, but this is distilled. So all these PDFs are different points where this PDF goes back to the Zotero. So this point was raised 3 different times, and these are the points. So that's how I've distilled it in this note. And then you have the actual references and points in here. So this is the source note, because this is just one thesis paper. This source note is linked to, you can see over here, cognitive load theory, multimedia education, retrieval practice, sort of memory, and then some other points as well that's going on around. So this is one version of a distillation, because this is a source note that's been distilled. You can see there are loads of sections and outlines. This outline is much more surface level, because color really doesn't mean anything. It's the falling cat study, which is part of the thesis, because a PhD thesis is typically 4 years and they did multiple studies. So this is the section on color, which happened to be to do with falling cat's multimedia video. This is what I would class as source note distillation, which you could class as progressive summarization, where I have the reference, I have the highlighted point, and then I have the bold outlined section. But all of this will then be distilled again inside of the actual note where I'm expressing this information. So if I go to my I have no idea why I've gone through search. I could have just gone through the local graph here. If I go to this note and I come down to multimedia design principles, inside of here, basically everything that was in the bottom section of the original source note. So if I bring the note back up, so everything at the bottom of this, so basically everything down here, most of the things in here and a couple of points up here are in this very small section of a couple of hundred, well, not even, maybe a couple hundred words. And this is where the next section of distillation happens for me, which is I have the outline, i.e. the section, but then I have a paragraph. And this paragraph summarizes something in specific, so I can reference it elsewhere. This has been referenced elsewhere because it has a block reference. Can you see that on stream? Yeah, you can. Which is spatial continuity principle. So that's the principle. That's the bold principle. And wherever I've referenced that, this block will show. And the reason this is useful, it means it means that when I write it, I don't have to rewrite it again, which you can do in Logseq, block referencing, but I haven't seen many use cases of it yet, but not many people that are inside the notes are doing things like this. So I'm not sure where I would reference, like who I would reference you to see that in Logseq. So the distillation process in my working notes goes through the points again, but then when I come into the introduction, this at the top of each section, so this bit, etc., they are synopsis of the multimedia research. Most of the time, it's a summary of everything underneath it. So multimedia, different multimedia, experimental situation, etc., will be summarized at the top part. So I don't need to go through the entire page to see everything that's going on. And then the synopsis is a synopsis of those sections, if that makes sense. So I have right at the bottom, I have a block, which is block referenced. Then above that, I then have the outline section, which you can see here. And then at the top of the outline section, I have a synopsis of whatever that section says. Then at the top of the page, I have a synopsis of each of those. So what this synopsis basically does is summarize the entire page. So this is 2,600 words. So all of this summarizes this thesis, essentially, which is, I think it's 316 pages long. So this summarizes essentially this entire thesis because I can hover over and then go to any point that I need to, which makes life much, much easier for me when I want to include this in a video. That's a very long-winded way of saying it just makes life easier when researching stuff. And what this also allows me to do inside this synopsis is when I'm going through, so if I go to my learning page, let's pin this very quickly. If I go to, actually, let's go to this one because this finished, into here, and then I want to, and I see multimedia education, and I want to find something in specific, I can come into here, and if I'm looking for evolution of technology, I can go there and go, I want this one. Open that up. That was a middle click on my mouse. I've then gone straight to that section of the page rather than having to find the page or find the section or find the blocks or find the outline through search. I can just go through that page preview outline. To give you a bit of a use case for my navigation using the page preview, page preview is a native plugin inside of Obsidian. You don't have to do anything special with that. And then when it comes to the distillation of capture notes, I guess I could kind of do that now. So this, has it been linked to anything? It looks like it has, because I must have done something earlier. I probably linked it earlier. Did I? No, I haven't. Oh, that's because it's an outgoing link. Never mind. Yeah, so what I will do is I will read the notes. So this is a podcast, the podcast that I referenced earlier. I will just do a very crude copy and paste inside of here. I will then remove all of the spaces just so I know what reference goes where, if that makes sense. Drag it over into here, leave a gap. So now when I come back to talent identification, I have the source note, which is the podcast, and then I then have all of the points. I'm actually going to move this to podcast. So that's now gone. I know I've processed it. And this is what those points of all the other source note, all the other working notes were. So if we go to weighting, I'm sure there's going to be something in here. Go down to do here. So this is what this is. And for me to distill this, what I will do is I'll look at this, I'll look at these points, make an outline heading, and then start bringing these things together. So if I go to the approaches to human cognition page and go down to neuroimaging, these points here, you can see this second point, which is ERPs. All of this was from multiple different sources, which I've actually got rid of because they were really bad sources. But I condensed it all into one block section. Maybe actually, I think note-taking will be a good one because I'm still working on this one. So if I go down to note-taking methods, you can see there's all the videos that talk about Zettelkasten, and that is referenced there. So this paragraph summarizes all of these videos, and that's the distillation process right there. And then when I go through this, this may then be distilled even further. That's where I'm currently at with the processing. But I will then go further in there and say, okay, this can probably be summarized in a couple of words, or I will summarize it at the top of note-taking methods because we've got Zettelkasten and then all the other methods. So all of these. And that's how I would distill the note from source to working. So there's sort of 3 different processes that I go through to get all of the information into one place. And once it's in one place, I will then work through what I'm going through. So if I go to retrieval practice, this is one I made earlier. I was working on this today, which is why, see, last updated. And that's how I've got to, because other references, all of these videos around active recall, retrieval practice, blah, 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 all the videos are here because they're talking about it, but they don't really say anything useful or specific. It's just a very surface level, shallow explanation of, hey, use flashcards. Why? They don't really say. And then I look for the references. Most of the time they don't have references. Small pet peeve of mine. So I then go and find the reference. But I keep it in here so I know other places that I can find things. And then I have the actual references that are useful, which is like meta-analysis, systematic reviews, articles, papers, and things from actual research rather than just YouTube videos. Quality. So that's how I've done it in here. When it comes to metadata of my notes, you will have seen at the top, I have a plugin, a community plugin. I don't use many, but this plugin basically puts in when I last updated a note. And the reason I have it up here is it's very easy for me to see when I last worked on the note. I could do it from the file explorer here and hover over a note. I actually need to find one now. You see, you can see last modified and created. I don't want to have to hover over the note, especially my file explorer, because 1, I never go in there, and 2, finding this note in there. Yes, I could use a hotkey, but it's just a pain. So it's just easy to have it up there. And the name of that community plugin, before you ask in chat, I'm not even going to look at chat, is, I don't know the name of it, update time on edit. There you go. Tag Wrangler is how I did the tags earlier. Reading time is down the bottom of the page. You probably can't see it, but down at the bottom of every page, it shows me the reading time. Pandoc is for exports. Format hotkeys is just so I can use hotkeys for headings rather than having to push hash like 6 times. Excalibur is one that I'm experimenting with, and citation again is another one I'm experimenting with. So I'm not going to talk about those at depth because I need to understand them more before I can really talk about them. Depth of understanding. So that covers the majority of the distillation process. If you have any questions, which you probably will do, let me know. Bas, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I was listening in. I was looking at things like the reference, which is totally different. And I think you talked about the embedding as well. And I did like a small embed, but I never use it because it just clutters up my view. It's nice that you can embed like a sub block, but reference though a lot. You know, that's like the way to move through notes and to distill your setup. And I use it very often when I've searched something to add it to my notes when I'm trying to get like to a conclusion, to get like an outline of where did I get related information from.
So,
but I usually link to a block.
You can do a block reference like I've done inside of Logseq, can't you?
Yeah, this is like a block reference, for example. So, and this is one as well. It's actually the default, right? So if I go to like a thing and I don't select anything, I do Control-C, then I copy a block reference. So that's what it by default does if I do a copy. I need to select text if I want to copy text. And I use that all the time to reference in between notes and things. I even use it to make like a daily task list and when I'm working at the bank. Because there I make like my day plan and I put like a task list on top of it. And then I basically go through like the old tasks that I have. And I just copy links over to make like a dedicated task list for the day. So I don't have to go through the generated list that I have and figure out like what was I going to do today or where is it in the query. I like making like a nice short overview of steps that I'm going through. To demo that is like, for example, put this one here, like the sidebar usage. Then I would do Control-C and I would have like a, let's see, to do tasks, I would usually call it. I would usually have like a template for it. But then I would do something like this because then I can make a list and I can still mark this off. And you see it will change there. And it won't change here now because it's in the same page, so it doesn't get it. But if it's from a different page, then it updates.
Right. Actually, that's something that I find kind of a it's not annoying but amusing. So I'll give you an example inside of Obsidian. It makes sense. It's not like a, oh, why can't you do that sort of thing. But this one, just an example. This says progressive summarization, and that's the block reference. If I want to reference this block inside of itself, it doesn't let you do that. And it's obvious that it doesn't let you do that. But the amount of times I've tried to do that, I'm like, why isn't it? Oh, yeah, I'm in the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same with pages. So if I go to like this example person set and I try to reference myself by saying like, hey, I want to reference myself, then it doesn't. And it's super annoying in when because I very often build queries that reference yourself and then it doesn't work. I can use like a macro for it called current page, but yeah, that just I get why it doesn't allow you to reference itself, because it would be pointless. You click on it and you come at the same spot where you're at, so you would be walking in a loop. But at the same point, it confuses me some of the times. I'm not sure if it's with blocks, but because blocks, I don't really search blocks in Logseq. I usually copy the reference and put it somewhere, because searching is like, for me, it's usually too much unless you know the exact thing you're searching for. I usually have it on a sidebar and do a copy paste thing.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. So if we go back to the Distil section, progressive summarization, I think we've gone through pretty well. Intermediate packets, I treat blocks as intermediate packets and pages in intermediate packets. It's kind of like every resource that I have as an intermediate packet. I mean, even products, i.e. videos or scripts or actual like finished but still dynamic notes, are still intermediate packets. So I'm not sure. How do you look at the term intermediate packets that Tiago uses? Because to me, it's just like everything is an intermediate packet for something.
Yeah, I totally agree on that one. Like for me, all my notes are constantly like intermediate, like they're constantly working on it. I'm changing it. As I demoed earlier, like I search for something, I can't find it, and then when I do find it, the first thing I do is change it so that it matches what I would search for. And it's the same for notes. Like I'm a very proponent of making things better every time you touch it. So if I touch a note because I'm searching something, I start adding to it, I start cleaning it up, and then that happens over time. So things that I touch a lot are usually a lot cleaner than the things that I touch a little. But all the notes are constantly in flux. If there is an end result, then it usually for me has like a state with to do, doing, done in it, and then there is a done thing, but then the only thing done means is that I published this data and it's out there in the world, and it's more of a reminder that if I'm going to update or change it, that means that there's something out there that is outdated by definition, that I might be better off just making like a new project or a new page and calling it refresher for 2022 or something.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, makes sense. With review then, do you do reviews? I used to do a weekly review, which was partly because of the podcast I was doing. I was reviewing information, but now I'm in my notes all the time. I don't need to do a review of my research because research is my life right now. PhD, love that. So, but do you do a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or yearly review of sorts?
I'm trying yet again to get like in a weekly review set, but I constantly fail because I'm busy or the Sunday has other things. Like last Sunday I was at a family outing, and I usually try to do a weekly review on Sunday because I really enjoy that Sunday morning, looking back at the week, planning the next week when everybody's still asleep. I wake up at 6:30 regardless of day or clock. Yeah.
No.
I think we've matched it. Then when I get up, you sometimes go to bed or something. It's like that.
Close sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like my way of working. So I do the weekly review, and I'm also trying to optimize and change it, because I used to do it basically on what things did I do and what things am I going to do. So very GTD driven, which it was originally. And now I'm trying to change it a bit more to like, hey, what things did I discover and what am I going to do with that? I'm going to clean up those notes. That's also come back to the daily thing where I have like a daily task now, which is my writing inbox, where I just have things that I found, which I put like a hashtag writing inbox whip. So like I put a short name to it because I don't like typing a lot. And then I use those to go like, okay, this thought bubble happened there, it's related to that, and I need to turn that into like more of a concrete thought. And then after I turn it into a concrete thought, I turn it into like an atomic node or something I could copy paste. But as I said, that's a process I'm trying to learn.
There's that word again, atomic node. Ugh.
Oh, you hate it. Like
if you class atomic nodes as blocks as well, I'm fine with it. But I tried using atomic notes, like a note for each concept and idea, and it was just so much hassle. I was like, nah, I can't be doing this anymore. That's why I have longer notes. That's why I use blocks. It's just so much
same
easier.
Here. I usually have like a thought, and then I have like a section under it with sound bites, and those are basically blocks with like a label on it, like this you could use for this topic, so that I don't have to write it once and I can copy it over more. But I'm very much a person that lives in the day, as one says. So I get the data and I live in the now, and then I get look to atomic notes and go like, oh my God, what I've written there is terrible. Let me just rewrite it. And then I basically do the work over again. So I could do better, but then again, no, you get what you get with me. Like, this is how I feel today. And, it might change next week. People just have to deal, I'm afraid. Because I always the new and shiny thing chasing.
I was going to say, I'm looking forward to this one. So how do you avoid shiny new toy syndrome? And as an engineer, developer, software, nerdy, codey person, I would imagine you struggle more than me with knowing your like affinity to stuff like tech, tools on tech, obviously. How do you avoid it, or do you avoid it? Do you just, you know what, I'll get everything, I'll try everything?
The problem is that I want to try everything, but there's this space and time problem, which is kind of getting in the way. So that's why very often I put things onto like a someday maybe list, or I put like hashtags in and say like, when I have time, when I'm playing. And then the thing that I'm trying to change in my workflow is that instead of opening Twitter for the 16th time this hour, I would go to my to-read list and actually do something productive. But in practice, that only works in the sabbatical week that I try to have every 7 or 8 weeks, where I don't do anything on my task list, and I should just read and consume and get into that a bit. I got Senti Younger to thank for that change in lifestyle.
Yeah, what Torin said, I have an apps to try list. I kind of do as well. So I have an apps page, which, again, like you can see, this is a notes other page. This is an older format that I have. There's the Obsidian aliases for reference to people that don't know how to do it in Obsidian. It's very similar to Logseq. You just have the 1 colon instead of the 2. But it's got to be inside the YAML, which is the 3 lines. But inside here, I have different apps, so notes apps, flashcard tools, and all those sorts of things. So my approach to shiny new toy syndrome is I have a very high bar for actually including something inside of my system. So for example, with Morgen, I tried out Morgen, and the only reason I adopted it so quickly is it solved problems with my Google Calendar workflow. All the other tools I try, I'm like, yeah, this just replicates what I do in Obsidian or Morgen now. Why would I change it? Why would I go to that? And when developers reach out to me, like, can you review my app? I'm like, yes, but unless I see a reason why I would do that instead of what I'm currently doing, I'm not going to bother doing it. So I have a very high bar for actually using something, but exploring it, oh yeah, I'll do that straight away. I'll put that in my apps list, and I'll be like, what's going on? I'll do like a 10-second. What's going on? What buttons can I push?
Yeah, I remember that one because I tried Morgen for the whole of 10 minutes before I said like, nah. But it's the same thing, right? You take an app, and there's a lot of apps where I'm like half an hour, if it's a really good thing, maybe an hour, where I'm just pushing the buttons and see how it feels. And if it doesn't feel right, or I'm going like, this isn't really solving any of the problems that I'm currently having, then it goes to the side because there's 20,000 other apps that I want to do. And yeah, I think that I have to play with it, but really quickly be bored with it is I think the main way to deal with it. If it's something that I played with and go like, this is a deep dive. This is something that really needs time. So the Hugo thing, for example, like I figured it out. I played with it. I think that cost me like an hour or two of my life. And I go like, this is a deep, deep rabbit hole. I have to make a choice now. Either I'm diving in right now and I'll be lost for a couple of days, or I do it later, which will usually become never. But at least it's somewhere, and that's when I add it to my notes, add a hashtag play with it, or postpone it, put it on the someday maybe list, and see if okay, when I get to it, I'll get to it. But that choice needs to be made. Usually I'm bored with things. Other times, like with things that I should know better, like messing around with mechanical keyboards, I shouldn't. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it was going to get expensive and it's going to cost a lot of time. And I've got keycaps coming in the mail and I got different switches. Yeah, I'm a tech enthusiast and like touchy, clicky things.
Yep. Yeah, I was thinking, I was walking the dog earlier today, and I was thinking it's kind of like a dog, like when they're sniffing at whatever they're sniffing at, you sort of like, what's this? Oh, okay, that's interesting. Oh, what's that? Oh, that's interesting. And then they find something that's actually interesting, and they just stay there, and you're like, come on, we need to go. I feel like that's me. I'm like walking down the street, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'll have a look. Oh, I'll have a look at that as well. I'll have a look at. You don't really stick with something unless it's really caught your attention.
Yeah.
So this idea that was brought, so. In here, you'll be able to see on the page, you've got librarian, architect, and gardeners. And then Tiago has recently brought in students. The idea comes from categorizing essentially individuals into one of these 3/4 buckets. Comes from Anne-Marie Kumpf, I think is how you pronounce her last 2 names. And she suggested that librarians are collecting and creating a catalog using a tool, architects planning and building frameworks, gardeners allowing emergence of connected ideas, and then Tiago suggested a student uses short-term orientated goals, essentially, to use their tools for immediate projects. Now, to me, I fit in all of these categories at different times. So I like it as a surface level. Hey, here's a rule of thumb. If you do this more than the other, go this direction. But like when I'm looking at this, I think to myself, well, I'm a librarian because I'm always collecting stuff. And some of the things in my Obsidian, I search certainly like archived librarian style notes. But then I have architectured or archetyped notes that I would say I've planned out, I've built, I've fleshed out. But then I also have loads of what I would class as like gardener notes that are just all over the place. Like here's loads of seeds and things emerge together, which is what I went through earlier with the distillation. So I feel like I'm all of them at different points in time. What are your thoughts on the analogy?
Yeah, like I'm also all over the place because I don't think about like how I combine nodes, right? Like is it a node? What is it? What is like a node for itself? So I put things in, I link stuff together, but I don't think about it at that time because I'm usually doing 6 things at the same time. Things are like flying into my face, but it's also like I'm constantly distracted. So there's this fleeting window where I can capture something, put it somewhere. And so my first thing is like at least have it written down somewhere. Then there's like half the battle in my case. And then the next one is like, when am I going to look at it? So I put a note down. How am I going to? So I have to link it to something. If I don't link a note to anything, nothing will happen with it. Then it's just me writing it down for the writing it down sake, which also is good. Like in my overview, like I have a thoughts column in my journal, and with the thoughts column is where I type in the morning.
Do you want to show that?
Yeah, sure. Like it's here, like because I use my journal. But every morning I usually just run down some text here, and that one doesn't need to link to anything because I know I'm not going to reference it. I know that it's there so that I can just empty my head or just type what I'm thinking about. Very often, halfway through, I start linking towards things because it's how your mind works. But I don't have to there because the moment that I start thinking too much, I'm like, okay, I'm not doing my normal morning thoughts. Now I'm more making notes, and then I scroll down and go to notes and add it there. But the thoughts thing is like a thought process where I'm going like, this is just written down and it doesn't have a rhyme or reason to it. The only reason that it has though is that because it's a journal page, just like the mood thing that I got over on the top, I can go back to any date and time and figure out how I was feeling that day, because I can read my thoughts and look at the mood and go like, okay, that was what's going through my head at the time. I probably never will. There's more days than I got time to read. But I do like the whole idea of like being able to go like, what did I do 6 years ago? And I might at some point just make like a randomized, like a click, how was I feeling at X? Which I think might be good, because it might spark new ideas. I might be able to be my own content generator and go like, just see how what was I thinking 3 years ago on Monday the 13th of June, and then go like, oh yeah, that, and then place off from there.
So I had a really odd experience when I started using. So I was using Obsidian for my daily notes, and I got all the way around for a year. And when I typed in 101, it came up with last year's note, and I was like, oh, what was I doing this time last year? I had a look, because obviously all of my notes are connected. So I had a look, and I looked in the backlinks panel. I was like, I was reading about that a year ago. Really? Why? It's like such a drastic change. So every once in a while, because obviously my notes are now lapping over a year, I would just change the. So if I quickly show you my daily note, so you can see here I've got 2022. If I go into here and just go 2021, this is now going back to my 2021 page. So you can see I do have an old blog there. But this is what I was reading: 5 reasons you want to start a podcast. I started a podcast, so that makes sense. But these are the notes I was reading a whole year ago, and it's just really interesting to see sometimes. So maybe I'll have to add a second line in review, and then just the same day is just a year behind.
Yeah. So, question on, because one of the things that I currently hit is that there's a lot of data that I consume, like videos that I'm watching, podcasts I'm listening to, but I do a lot of those things on the go, right? So I don't have like a keyboard where I can make notes. How do you like make sure that you add all those things? Because by the time I arrive and I put my jacket on and I sit down, like I've basically forgot like what did I need to write, or I get like sucked into work, so I don't take the time to make notes on the setup that I just listened or watched.
So if I'm out and about, I will use the daily note. It just goes straight into here if it's a really quick thing. If it's if I know it's going to be a source note, then I would just make it as a new note, i.e. there, new note, and then I will add in a template, which that automatically links. And on your phone, that's the widget down on the bottom in Obsidian. I can't really show it on stream because it won't work very well. But when you start typing inside of an Obsidian page, you get a bar, and you can add anything to the bar. You can change the bar, and I have my templates there, so I can push the template button, push capture template, and that would be automatically input, and then I would just start typing whatever the note is. And because I know I haven't processed this because it's outside of my folders, if I do want to find a source or the source later on, I can do author, whatever, but it's there ready for me. So with the note that I did earlier today, let's just remove that one. So with the podcast note that I did earlier today, so these two bits, these two people, I added in when I came home because I was walking the dog at this point. And this one I added while I was out because you can copy the link inside of Spotify and put it into the page. And then all of this was just while I was walking around the field. So yeah, it's just a very quick on my phone, quick capture. And then you saw me do the second part like on the stream earlier. And I will never see this. Well, I probably won't go back to this note again until I'm working on this page, which may be sometime soon, but I doubt it because it hasn't even got the new formatting of tags. It does now. There we go. It's now up to date.
I'm suddenly having like an idea, and I just want to see if that works.
It's dangerous. Don't have ideas. That's dangerous.
Oh yeah, that's super dangerous, I'm told. Let's see. No, that works. That's nice. I'm wondering if it syncs back to my
Logseq is now up.
Yeah, I'm seeing if it like syncs because it's like really syncing like between my mobile phone and oh, there it is. So it takes a while. So this is a new feature Logseq app added, I think, last month. So I'm not used to it, but I think it's very related. So I can share from an app to Logseq, and then it adds it as a line in my daily notes in the bottom. So this is a quick capture that I did by going towards my Pocket Cast and saying like, hey, send this specific time slot that I'm listening to right now to Logseq, which is share Logseq, and then it adds it.
You can do the same in Obsidian.
Yeah,
you can share something to Obsidian.
I haven't used this because it wasn't there,
I do that with so when there's an article that I found on my phone, most of the time it's a news article or something on Twitter that I found, normally Torrent actually, to be honest. But it's normally something that I found on Twitter or something I've linked to it, and then I will go back to so what I'll do is I'll share it to the webpage, and I'll share it to my daily notes, so it's a reference there. I will then click and see if it's worth capturing, but it's kind of like a really crude read later, watch later, consume later list that I do on my phone. Expression. We had a question about digital gardening earlier, and obviously expression is essentially digital gardening, or part of digital gardening. For those unfamiliar, intermediate packets we went through earlier, inside of this section. Excuse me. Yeah, inside of this section, I believe. But yeah, the expression, moving forwards out into something, you don't have to create content. This is a big point that I want to say before we get into how we express stuff. When we say express, it doesn't mean content online. It just means something that you've expressed in a somewhat condensed form for you to reflect on or use in some way later. So it can be private. Like I would class my notes as private expressions of information that I'm using. They happen to be public because of Obsidian Publish, but if I didn't have Obsidian Publish, it would still be the exact same. So how do you express your notes?
There's a couple of ways. Like the main one that I use is that I collect them together into a video, because for me, that's like when I actually have to collect them. Because time is a thing, right? I very rarely have time to sit down and really collect notes, but once in a while I do, because I'm researching a certain topic. And then I collect them into subsets. So the main one was that I really wanted to figure out how advanced queries in Logseq worked, even though I rarely need them because the simple queries usually suffice. But I wanted to know because that one was constantly stumping me. And what happened there is that I started collecting things in a note until I get to a point where I'm going like, okay, clean it up so I can publish it to the world. And I don't think you need to publish it, as you said, like you publish it to yourself mostly. It's also the one that I mentioned earlier where I said like every time I touch a note, I make it better. So if I open a note and I need to search for it, I either make it easier to search by adding the right tags or the things that I was searching for, or if I have to read through a lot of the references, I copy whatever I found and move that to the top, or if it's already on the top, I reformat it so it's easier or quicker to parse, which is to me also a way of expressing, because I'm going like, hey, I needed this, I found this, now I'm adding it to the top because I'll probably need it in the future. Well, if I never need it, then I don't express it because it's just there waiting until I need it, which might be never, which is fire.
Do you have an example of that inside of your notes?
I'm trying to think of like one inside my notes where I did this. Like the most of the stuff is part of my work daily life.
That's what I was thinking.
Because that's where it happens the most, right? People ask me questions. An example I had today was I have a coworker, which of course has a page which has notes on that coworker, like what are they good at, what are their hobbies as well, because I keep track of those things. Because you want to ask like, how is the skiing going, if they come back from holiday, things like that. But also one person is leaving, which is unfortunately we hate to see him go, and I had to look up at what date was he leaving. So I went through the notes, found the references, went through like 3 or 4 pages until I found like a meeting where we discussed it, and that said like, hey, he's leaving at the I think the 1st of June. And then, of course, I copied that one and I posted to his page to the top saying like leaving at said and said time. And that's the process that I very often go through. Like I need something, then I go on this hunt and pack to search it. And then I take that information back with me like a miner bringing back gold and going like, this needs to be on top. And it might be that I keep doing the same thing, because if you keep putting stuff on top, but how many lines will a topic have? Some might have a long set, and then I start making them into outlines, right? Then I start making subsections. So things that I'm probably going to clean up soon is the video editing one. I collected a lot of videos over time. YouTube algorithm has detected that I'm interested in it, so I'm getting a lot of DaVinci Resolve video editing videos right now, and I really should start collecting those. Some were obvious, others were not. And then collect that and clean it up, mostly because I now know that I need to express. There's a new DaVinci Resolve 18 coming out. I always get like a ton of features shown then for a while, and then I forget about all those features straight after when the new version of DaVinci Resolve gets out of the zeitgeist. So there I really need to like make a mark, and which I'm going to do right now, to process my video editing.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to quickly share my screen. So these are examples of intermediate packets that Tiago talks about. So you've got some notes, so favorite tweets, etc. Intermediate packets is tweet storms, blog posts, and then heavy lifts being books and things. Now he talks about slow burns and heavy lifts. So slow burns being a fairly short task, or short tasks that you do over a long period of time. So say you want to do a project, you have a month, and you do certain, maybe like an hour of work a week. So you've got 4 hours of work, and you sort of spread out over time, slow burn. Or you have a heavy lift, which is what most of us are used to with like doing your exams after school. You're like, oh yeah, we've got an exam. I'm going to like do the entire syllabus in 2 days. That would be a heavy lift. And when it gets to the slow burns and heavy lifts for me, my research is mainly slow burns. But what that does, it means the heavy lifts are not as heavy, if that makes sense. So, for example, with the multimedia video that I showed you earlier, this was a slow burn. I was working at it for an entire week. Well, actually, it was a little bit longer than a week because of life. That life thing, it kind of gets in the way. But I was working at this note for a week. It was a fair amount of hours. I would say it's like 8 hours a day. But that's what I would normally do anyway. So it sounds a lot, but it's not. So I was doing this as a slow burn throughout about a week and a half. And then the heavy lift of doing the actual video. So the actual recording of the video was 2 days, 2 heavy days of like work. And that's how I would split them up. Yeah, are you similar in that case? I'm sharing your screen again now.
Yeah, it's like very, very similar. Like I collect the data and then I spend time thinking about it. So very often I put stuff like on a physical form. I put it on the whiteboard that is like normally in my view, but currently there's this huge artificial light here. And then I put it there to think about it. So every time I walk by it, I write things down. The same thing when I can't be on it. So like when it's in Logseq, I usually make like a task and I use a schedule. So I say like, repeat every day. And then every day I do a little bit of thinking. I read it and go like, okay, do I need to add something? Do I want to add something? And then at some point I have to pick and say like, now I need to collect these notes. So then I go through all the thoughts, and it usually is already a bit refined because as I said, I touch the note every day. So I improve the note every day. And then there's a point where I'm going like, okay, now I have this note. Now I need to do something with it. And then I really want to sit down, which is hard because I have a hard time sitting down for an hour to do concentrated work. Actually, I think this one comes from Tim Ferriss, who at some point said like, I need to bounce around for 2 hours before I can get work done. And that's very much in my set. Like I need to go like, ooh, shiny, shiny, shiny. And then after about 1 hour, I finally can wrangle the procrastination monkey into like, now we're going to do a note. And then I can finally do a note. The main culprit that hits me, this is also why the doing thing is important, because it shows me top and center what I was focusing on, is that as soon as you put one meeting in that, then the whole thing just falls flat, because I'm going like, I finally have it, now we have a meeting. No, and then it's gone again. So I hate meetings with a passion, and that's why I became a Scrum Master, because then you can have meetings all day.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, it didn't. But that's life for you. But I do get plan meetings, and then because I plan the meetings, I can bunch them together. So I can say like, okay, I just lose this day on meetings, and then the rest of the week stays clear. Which is also why I hate it when people go like, "Hey, your calendar was clear. I want to do a meeting at 1." No, 1 would be okay. That would be right after lunch. No, they do it at 2:30 or something. Like you lose 1.5 hour after lunch because you can't get anything started because the moment it gets started, it's like the meeting. They always plan that exact time.
So true.
But then once I get to it, there's usually music on top of my head and I write it down, but I need like a combination of writing it down and some physical thing. Because if I just do writing inside Logseq, I usually don't get in a flow state. I get in a flow state when I'm editing, but I can't get into a flow state when I'm doing text for some reason. And I'm not sure if that's Logseq. I had it less with Obsidian because of the speed. Because like when you're typing, there's no waiting point in time. So when I'm really like need to write down a lot of stuff, then speed becomes the essence, and then I pick something like a notepad to just write stuff down and copy it over if needed. But most of the times, I just wrangle it down, do some things on notes, and then type it over from the whiteboard, because the whiteboard means I have to stand up and I can walk around. And I think I have a video on it where I show that I have like a tablet holder next to my whiteboard, which has Logseq on it, so that I can get my notes while I transfer them to the whiteboard, think about it, and then condense them. And I even outline everything on the whiteboard and then get it into Logseq. And there I add like the large set of text, because writing is usually 2 words with what I was thinking. And then when I get into Logseq, I have a keyboard, and then I usually can type pretty fast, except when you're trying to learn a new keyboard. But, that's only going to last for a couple of weeks, unlike your plans, which will take months.
Yeah. Right. We're almost there. We're almost there. I want to show this graphic because I found this really useful. I got it years ago. But this is the code process. So what we've gone through in the stream: capture, organize, distill, express, through divergent and then convergent. It's a nice graphic. I don't like the linearity of it, but you can't really have a nonlinear graph like this. So it's a nice starting point, I think, to look at how you can do all of these things. And when it comes to the actual digital garden aspect of my notes, you can explore my notes, link in the description below. Torin, good to see you. After the LYT session in shortly, I will probably be joining as well at some point soon. But how I do this is my digital garden, my homepage. This is my publish. Research interest. These are the notes that, so if you hover over, you can see I still need to do something in that one, but that one's been written, etc. These are the ones that are at the top of the garden, trees, sort of things. These are top of mind, so you can see the Linking or Thinking conference is there at the moment, and all of these other topics are top of mind. The other notes are just in the waiting. So my digital garden essentially is here. These are my tags for budding and moving up that ladder of waiting, writing, written. But if you want to have a look at something, this is where you'd start, or this is what I'm working on. These are just other things that I get loads of questions about, so they're down the bottom. But this is what my digital garden looks like. It's here's something. Let's start at this point. Oh, here's loads of things just thrown at me. Let's have a look at neuropsychology or neuroscience or cognitive science or whatever. And then when you're jumping around in these different sections, you can go to anywhere and end up who knows where, to be honest, inside of my notes right now. A trustworthy source. There you go. Oh, we're in a note that isn't even in my update. There you go. Last updated 5/5/2022. And that's because I updated the tags, not because I actually wrote anything in it. If you have any questions, let me know in chat. Otherwise, I think we may close out the stream in a minute. Bas, do you have anything else you want to add while we see if any questions come in?
Let's see. I made a couple of notes here. Like one of my pet peeves currently that I miss from Obsidian, like not helping myself here, but keyboards, because the sidebar here like doesn't have as many keyboards as I would like. So with Obsidian, you would like jump around through the different windows that are open. But with Logseq, I kind of get stuck with the keyboard because the sidebar and switching to this one doesn't always help me out as well as it should. I'm trying to figure out a way to get that optimized. Maybe at some point I'll just use the Vim extension for Chrome, and then use that as a setup on top of it. But that would be kludgy workaround. So, but it's going to improve over time, I'm pretty sure, because there's a lot of keyboard-driven developers on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious why it's not like by default easy to switch to the sidebar and back. But that said, even though there's a lot of rough edges on Logseq, I really like the outlining, going into the outlining. I'm an old school workflowy user, which I loved. I saw Tom Solid mention something about him going back to workflow, or at least using it extensively. I'm curiously going to look into that. I don't think I'll switch to something like workflowy again, because that's like everything's an outline, and I like the pages outline difference and between in Logseq, and also really like the fact that everything's in Markdown and open. And also looking forward towards the syncing, not having to do it myself anymore and like wait for it.
I do want to add something right on the end, which some Obsidian users may not be aware of because they're not an insider inside of Obsidian. But what they've got now, so inside of Obsidian Publish, you can now collaborate on a public publish website, which a lot of people it won't affect many people, but they've also brought out collaborative sync vaults. So John Stewart is someone that I do a podcast with called The Notion Nerds, even though neither of us use Notion anymore. Well, that much. And we were testing this out, and essentially you can have multiple people in one sync vault. So it allows you to collaborate with lots of people. So you can have, as long as you have a sync account, you could have 5-10 people editing the same vault. So you can have essentially live working inside of Obsidian. John and I were screen sharing, or I was screen sharing, and there was a 5-second delay was the biggest delay that we had. And that was when I created a block embed link on a page, and it took it 5 seconds to sync up to his computer. But this is obviously over video call. But it basically allows you to work in one vault, which is what Obsidian are working on at the moment. And potentially, because I know they've done this inside of Obsidian, is they've excluded folders from Obsidian Publish. So you could potentially have folder security, so you only share folders with certain people, which may allow for better collaboration using Obsidian with teams, because at the moment it's kind of difficult. But it may mean that you can have, say, if you've got 5 members on a team and they all go to a sync vault, if you could share settings, so share a folder with that person, a folder with that person, a folder with that person, and everyone edit in the same sync vault, it may increase collaboration inside of Obsidian, which I think it's an interesting direction to see where it goes, and to see if Logseq does something similar, because Logseq is obviously cloud-based. So I don't know whether Logseq would take an Obsidian approach with like sharing sync vaults, or whether it takes a Notion approach and bring accounts in. I'm not sure.
Now, Logseq is no longer cloud-based. I mean, they run the application from the website if you want to, but then you still have to open a local vault. So they no longer have like the cloud sync that they used to have. They are working on sync, though. That's like one of the big next milestones that I probably think will land in the next month or the next couple of months. Of course, then it will be in beta, and I'm going to test it because I currently use my own sync solution between all my devices, and I stress test it a lot because it goes for my phone, tablet, 2 laptops with different operating systems, and a virtual server. So I make it run the numbers. And that definitely gets me a couple of sync conflicts, which I hope the Logseq sync will solve. And then, of course, that's the step that Obsidian solved a long while ago. So I know that they're experimenting with like having multiple people inside a vault, but that one's really tricky. I think people always underestimate like the amount of magic that happens when you have something like a Notion or Google Drive having multiple people edit the same page and seeing cursors walk around. And as long as it's sync based, we can't. So then there's a chance of conflicts, and dealing with conflicts, that's where the real magic is. So I'm also very curious how Obsidian handles that. What if you both edit the same line? How will it resolve the conflict? In the best case scenario, you will have twice the same line, so you can pick a mix or something, or you can choose.
So John and I experimented John and I experimented with literally everything we could think of. And what it does, it's exactly the same as when you sync with your phone. Like a phone device is, it will take the sync vault as the main vault. So if you've synced something, so if I sync something to the vault and then he syncs afterwards, his will then take precedent over. If you type at the same time, it's whatever goes through first. It's the same as when you're essentially the synced person is just another device. That's how it's treated.
Yeah.
Which is
So
quite
then
nice.
at that point, that's like okay if you're aware that you're both using it, and then it happens, but you need some way to figure out like, hey, why did it happen? Because people start losing trust in the system if they lose text, and even though it was their own fault, they still will go like, what happened? And in your case, because you were testing, what happened. But if you don't know what happened, then people start, throwing something away is not a big problem, but you should at least tell people that there was a conflict here.
File recovery will become your friend.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like I really love the direction that it's going. Yes, I sometimes miss things from Obsidian, which is obvious because I've used both tools extensively. I had, of course, the reverse when I was using Obsidian, and I was missing like the journal. Scrolling through my pages was something that in Obsidian every time I go like, oh, why is the journal so complicated? I just want to scroll back in history and find out what I did yesterday. So, both tools have their merits. I'm very much an outliner. That's why I went back to Logseq, because I love the outlining. And you can see the huge amount of improvements that are made. It's really turning into a company. They're really starting to ramp things up and looking at things like stability, speed, things that until now weren't that much needed because it was like a small set of nodes they were developing. So developers can take a lot more hits than normal end users, because we look at it and go like, oh yeah, I know why this broke, I'm fine, I'll fix it. But that won't last forever, and that's the level that they're going to head now. If they want to take the mainstream market, they have to get to the level that Obsidian is now. And I think, at least from what I remember, that Obsidian went through like the same phase, right? They had a point where it was functional, it was working, but it wasn't meant for the world. It was meant for people that were at least a bit tech savvy. And now it's much more focused on the world. Logseq is behind the curve a bit, but I'm pretty sure they will catch up sooner rather than later, because that's the focus that they have right now. And then there's the whole list of things that I wish they had, but 9 out of 10 times when I say like I wish this had, means that I look it up in their list of requests, and then it's somewhere on like 60 with the 50 things that are above it are looking like, yeah, I wish I had that too. So it's like exactly. They can't do magic. It won't get there. The only way to do that is we could time travel and get like Logseq from a year from now, and then we still probably have like new wishes.
Oh, definitely. Like Brian says, tech savvy skills help no matter what the tool. If you do have any other questions, leave them in the comment section below in the video, and I will respond to all of them, because I don't not respond on YouTube. So yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. And yes, the replay will be available on YouTube for those still watching or joined a little bit late. So have a good day, have a good evening, and I'll see you all online somewhere. Bye, everyone.